The crashing sea split violently as the shark's massive tail fins swept through the water. Tyler, the young man at the center of it all, urged Sophia not to give up and to keep rowing with all her strength. His sharp eyes caught sight of a gigantic shark, circling closer and closer with every second. A dark thought crept into Tyler's mind. If this continued, neither of them would survive. Believing he had no other choice, Tyler snatched the paddle from Sophia's trembling hands, though she failed to grasp what he intended. She cried out his name, her voice breaking, silently pleading that he wouldn't sacrifice her, sobbing that she still wanted to live. With a violent splash, the shark broke the surface, its cavernous jaws lined with needle-like teeth snapping open. Sophia slipped beneath the waves, gasping for breath, while Tyler slammed the board into the beast's face with every ounce of his strength, stopping its bite. For a tense moment, the shark's cold eyes locked onto Tyler before it dove back into the depths. But when Sophia began sinking helplessly, the predator shifted its attention to her, forgetting Tyler entirely. The creature surged towards Sophia, its maw yawning wide, ready to swallow her whole. Choking and flailing, Sophia looked upward, her final desperate thoughts clinging to life itself. Just then, the shark's senses caught the irresistible trace of fresh human blood drifting through the water. At the same time, Tyler tore off a jagged plank from the board and bound it against his bleeding wound, bracing himself to dive. Salt water poured into the cut, and he let out a scream of raw agony. Summoning his last reserves of strength, Tyler plunged beneath the surface, luring the shark with his bloody trail. The monster immediately abandoned Sophia and hurled itself after Tyler's scent. It closed the distance in an instant, jaws widening to snap his legs clean off. But Tyler twisted away just in time, making the beast's teeth clash against empty water, leaving it open. Driving the splintered wood with brutal force, Tyler jammed it into the shark's inky eye. Roaring in agony, the creature thrashed and tried to flee, giving Tyler the chance to tear open a deep gash. The great predator darted back and forth wildly before slowing, drifting downward toward the seabed. Victorious, Tyler shot back to the surface, determined to save Sophia. She, meanwhile, was still choking and drifting closer to unconsciousness. Her mind screamed for help as her eyelids drooped, robbed of air and strength. The last blur she saw before blacking out was Tyler's figure racing through the water toward her. Realizing she had gone limp, Tyler pushed himself harder, pouring every ounce of will into his strokes. He reached her just in time, catching her before her body could sink into the abyss. With Sophia held tightly under one arm, he kicked furiously upward, desperate to reach the surface and drag her to land. At last, Tyler hauled her onto the shore, laying her across the scorching sand. Sophia coughed violently, water gushing from her lungs as she gasped back life. Wiping her lips, she clutched her chest, sensing heavy pressure there. Glancing downward, she discovered Tyler's hands pressing rhythmically against her sternum. His eyes locked onto hers as he continued firm compressions over her heart. Blushing furiously, Sophia shrieked, accused him of indecency, and slapped him across the face. A few moments later, shame flushed her cheeks as she stammered an apology, realizing too late that he had been performing CPR. Tyler turned his head away, remarking that he'd done more than just breathe air into her, his words twisting her thoughts. He reminded her matter-of-factly that they had both studied medicine, so her outburst puzzled him. Flustered again, Sophia avoided his gaze, mumbling her gratitude for saving her. Surveying their surroundings, she asked where they had ended up, but Tyler admitted he hadn't the faintest idea. She wondered if his phone still worked. He answered that it did, but there was no signal. She insisted he try messaging the rescue services, but he repeated that without a signal it was useless. With false confidence, Sophia claimed she could contact them even without a SIM card. Taking his phone, she announced that she would handle it herself. She sent a plea for help, only to watch it bounce back undelivered. For a long moment, the two stared awkwardly at the useless device. Then Sophia declared smugly that his phone must be broken. Tyler, meanwhile, had already scrambled up a palm tree and shouted down, asking why she thought that. From above, he explained that messages could only send without a SIM if the phone was within range of a network. Sophia demanded to know what they should do next, pointing out that they had to figure out their location and call for rescue. Tyler scanned the coastline for signs of people when suddenly something unusual drew his eye. Alarmed, he barked at Sophia to stay quiet. Irritated, she snapped back, demanding to know why he hushed her, reminding him she had nearly been eaten by a shark. Her protests continued until Tyler rushed over, clamped his hand over her mouth, and whispered urgently for silence. His gaze stayed fixed on the spot where he'd glimpsed movement. In a flash, a spear whistled through the air, forcing Tyler to yank Sophia aside to safety. The weapon slammed into the sand, quivering violently before going still. Flattened on the ground, Sophia gawked at Tyler, asking what had just happened. Both turned their eyes toward the brush, where rustling grew louder and footsteps drew near. Out of the foliage emerged 3 figures armed with crude weapons. The tribesmen shouted angrily in their own tongue, advancing menacingly toward the pair. Tyler reeled at the sight of natives here, but forced himself to try communication. Hoping for answers about their whereabouts, he attempted to speak, but the men only screamed and charged. Startled by their aggression, Tyler narrowly dodged the first spear thrust. The attackers struck clumsily in turns, while Tyler, still hoping for dialogue, tried different languages to reach them. Their leader, frustrated by their failure, barked another command. With a loud cry, he ordered his warriors to strike together. Tyler raised his voice, urging them to stop, bewildered at what offense he had caused. One thrust his spear repeatedly at him, but Tyler's swift reflexes avoided every strike. Seizing the distraction, the leader lunged from behind. Deciding negotiation was over, Tyler snatched the shaft of the nearest spear. He yanked it hard toward himself, spoiling the leader's attack. Using the opening, Tyler drove his foot powerfully into the leader's body. The kick shattered his nose, sending him staggering back in agony. As the man reeled, Tyler attempted to wrest the weapon from his grip. He tugged fiercely, ready to smash the leader's face with its tip. Sophia screamed a warning, spotting another attacker rushing in. The third tribesman slashed Tyler's side, leaving a bloody gash. Surrounded now, Tyler grimly accepted that these men intended to kill him. Then, without warning, one of them broke away, charging at Sophia instead. She shrieked, turning to flee, but he was faster. His spear's butt slammed into her back, sending her sprawling in the sand. Sophia cried out in pain, clutching at the ground. Propping herself on her elbows, she coughed up sand, gasping that she could barely breathe. The savage raised his weapon high, screaming, preparing to drive it through her. Sophia cried out Tyler's name, squeezed her eyes shut, and braced for the strike, feeling warm blood spray across her face. But when she opened them, it was her attacker's body skewered by Tyler's spear. The corpse collapsed heavily before her, making her scream again in terror. Tyler planted his foot on the fallen man's chest, wrenching the weapon free. With the spear slick in his grip, he scanned for the others. He flicked the blood away and strode forward to confront them. Their leader bellowed a war cry and hurled himself recklessly at Tyler. Calmly, Tyler drove the spear straight into his throat, killing him in one brutal thrust. As the chief crumpled, Tyler extended his hand, declaring one foe remained. He stooped to retrieve the fallen leader's blade. The last native gave a fearful shout, backing away as Tyler prepared to strike. With perfect timing, Tyler hurled the weapon. The man blocked desperately, knocking it aside with his spear. Tyler, unshaken, surged forward and smashed his knee into the man's face. The blow knocked the weapon from his hands and sent him sprawling in the sand. Seizing the chance, Tyler hurled a bone dagger at the fallen native. His precise throw struck the man's head, and Tyler turned swiftly to scan for further threats. Sophia, trembling from the ordeal, whispered his name in a shaken voice. Tyler glanced at her, realizing she was utterly terrified, silently noting she had been sheltered her whole life. She asked if he was truly real, and he calmly confirmed that he was. Staring at him in awe, Sophia demanded to know when he had become so formidable. She pointed out that he had taken down 3 grown warriors after just fighting a monstrous shark. She promised that if it ever came to trial, she would testify in his defense, swearing he killed only in self-preservation. Tyler listened with a faint smirk tugging at his lips at her unusual way of comforting him. Curious, she asked why he was grinning, and he countered by asking if she was afraid. Sophia admitted she would be dead if not for him, then pressed him on where he had learned such skills, noting he looked nothing like a typical medical student. With quiet honesty, Tyler revealed that he had served several years in the military before entering university. His mind flickered back to a memory of a wealthy pharmaceutical magnate assigning him a secret mission, one requiring him to pose as an ordinary student. The man handed Tyler a photo of a girl, stating that his sole duty was to protect her. But before Tyler could even approach his charge, disaster struck aboard the cruise ship. He still wasn't sure if the explosion had been staged, but he prayed the girl had survived long enough for him to reach her. Snapping back to the present, Tyler retrieved a bone knife from a corpse and hacked open coconuts. Sophia ran toward him under a palm, warning that someone was approaching from the sea. Tyler squinted into the distance, spotting a raft drifting closer, carrying a handful of people. Sophia assumed they were fellow survivors and moved to greet them, but Tyler stopped her, forbidding her to step into the water. A frenzy of sharks was already circling the raft, drawn to it like vultures. The stranded group panicked as more and more fins sliced through the waves around them. Sophia gasped at the terrifying scene, whispering that it looked hopeless. Tyler's eyes roamed their surroundings until they settled on the bodies of the fallen tribesmen. He seized one corpse and waded into the water, telling Sophia firmly to stay behind. Once deeper, he began swimming out with the lifeless body toward the predators. The scent of blood quickly distracted the sharks, who veered off their course. Watching them shift, Tyler silently celebrated and calculated the survivors' escape path. As the sharks drew closer, he released the corpse into their midst. A moment later, he kicked off the body, propelling himself back to shore. The sharks swarmed their grisly meal while Tyler swam free of danger. Catching his breath, he decided the same tactic must be used again with the second body. Sophia, standing in the shallows, had already dragged another corpse forward, insisting on helping despite his earlier command, making Tyler admit he had underestimated her. The raft's passengers rejoiced as the predators abandoned them. Seizing the chance, they rowed with desperate strength toward land. While the sharks tore into their distraction, the survivors paddled furiously, reaching the safety of shore. Once ashore, Tyler split more coconuts from a tree, offering refreshment to the newcomers. Sophia approached one of the women, calling her the leader and asking after her condition. Rising, the woman thanked both Tyler and Sophia, stating bluntly that without them, her group would be dead. Sophia quickly asked what had become of the other students and teachers. The woman's expression fell. She confessed she carried no hopeful news. Chaos had reigned, she explained, and only a handful had managed to reach lifeboats. The fire had driven the crowd into panic, scattering everyone before they could organize. A storm had struck immediately after the explosion, and in the end, only their small raft survived. Sophia struggled to accept the grim truth when one man suddenly recognized her. He introduced himself as Charles, reminding her they had once taken a nutrition course together, and he thanked her for saving his life. She corrected him, pointing at Tyler, insisting he was the one they all owed, while she had only assisted. Charles beamed as he extended his hand to Tyler, praising him warmly. As they shook, Charles asked curiously what Tyler had thrown into the water to divert the sharks. Without waiting for an answer, he nervously guessed aloud that they had looked like human bodies. His companions stared in shock at the implication, eyes widening. Tyler replied calmly that he had indeed used the corpses of locals. Their horror deepened and they shrank back from him. Charles stammered, demanding to know if Tyler had murdered innocent villagers for shark bait. Tyler stated bluntly that feeding the dead to sharks was better than letting the living be devoured. The newcomers froze in stunned silence, Charles calling his actions monstrous. Sophia snapped at Tyler, saying he was making matters worse, but Tyler explained the savages had attacked them, leaving him no choice. Charles declared Tyler a threat and insisted that restrictions had to be placed on him. He argued Tyler should never be allowed to move freely or be out of sight. He even suggested binding him at night for everyone's safety. Charles stepped closer to Sophia, promising he would personally protect her, but she scoffed that she needed no such thing. Furious, she accused the group of insanity, reminding them that without Tyler they'd already be shark food. Charles held firm, declaring that Tyler had blood on his hands and was unpredictable. Tyler regarded him coolly, telling him not to worry so much. He added that if Charles truly thought him dangerous, he could happily toss him back into the sea. Sophia shouted at Charles to quit spouting nonsense since he hadn't seen what had happened. She reminded them that Tyler fought only in self-defense against hostile warriors who refused peace. The leader intervened, urging gratitude since Tyler had also saved them from the sharks. Charles sulked in silence for a moment, then forced a broad grin, claiming he agreed with her and apologizing for overreacting. He turned his charm back on Sophia, insisting he had only worried for her safety. He argued she would be safer surrounded by reliable people like himself. Sophia ignored him, while another survivor stepped forward to introduce himself. He gave his name as Alex, saying he worked in construction and sat on a supervisory board. Alex asked Tyler if he had a plan for what came next. Tyler invited him to share his ideas. Alex reasoned that since rescue might be far off, their priorities had to be securing water, food, and understanding the island. He proposed venturing into the jungle before nightfall in hopes of finding survivors or escape routes. The leader, whom they now addressed as Sally, asked Sophia's opinion, and Sophia declared she would follow Tyler wherever he led. Tyler considered the lack of resources on the beach versus the danger in the jungle, likely swarming with tribesmen. After weighing both sides, he advised against rushing into the forest just yet, warning it was far too risky. Sally admitted he might be right, adding that wild beasts or hostile locals could lurk within. Alex dismissed her fears, insisting large animals were unlikely to inhabit the island. He argued that if they encountered locals, he could negotiate peacefully. Charles agreed, scoffing that savages were simple people easy to talk down. Sophia snapped, shouting that she had already told them otherwise. Tyler raised a calming hand before her, saying he understood their differing views. He picked up a bone knife, remarking that killing was still murder, whatever the reason. He approached Charles, saying that whether it was 1 death or 5, a killer would always be judged a murderer. Stepping closer, he brandished the knife threateningly. Sally cried out his name in panic, begging him not to do anything rash. Charles shielded his face with his hands, shouting for help. Tyler slashed downward, the blade hissing through the air. Charles opened his eyes in terror, only to see Tyler had cut a coconut neatly in half. Handing half to Sally, Tyler invited her to drink. Then he passed the knife to Alex, asking if he wanted a try. Alex nodded. Slicing into the coconut, Alex remarked that they couldn't just sit idle and hope for rescue. He stressed their lack of resources, saying coconuts alone wouldn't sustain them long. Tyler winced at the cut on his side, suddenly recalling something important. He pulled out a wolf fang, explaining he had taken it from one of the warriors. Alex examined it carefully, saying he doubted they were the only survivors from the ship, given how many had been aboard. He again urged that they search the jungle, at least to locate other survivors. Tyler reasoned silently that going alone into the jungle would allow him to scout freely, but with the group in tow, his hands would be tied. Out loud, he agreed to the plan, stressing they must move slowly and cautiously. Soon after, Tyler led the group through the dense growth, gripping a spear tightly. Alex pointed out different varieties of palm trees, explaining their names with confidence. Sally, intrigued, remarked that he seemed very knowledgeable, to which he laughed, saying he was just an avid hiker. Suddenly, a hare burst from the underbrush, darting past them and vanishing into the foliage. Excited, Alex urged them to catch it immediately and gave chase. Tyler held Sophia back, warning her not to waste energy on such a quick animal. He explained that in thick vegetation like this, even he would struggle to catch it. A little later, Tyler and Sophia heard panicked cries and decided to investigate. From the voices, Sophia recognized Charles and Sally screaming. She urged Tyler to hurry, fearing danger, but he insisted it wasn't urgent. Shocked at his calmness, she pressed him on why he felt that way. Tyler replied casually that they would eventually find their way back. Just then, Charles burst out of the brush toward them, followed by Alex and Sally. Charles shouted frantically for everyone to run toward the beach, while Sophia looked on in confusion. Tyler seized her hand and ran, pulling her along as she glanced back. Sally lagged behind, struggling to keep up. Distracted and panicked, she snagged her foot on a heavy root. She fell hard, tumbling into the grass. Sophia tried to pull away from Tyler, insisting she had to help Sally. Moments later, the source of their fear emerged, a massive wild boar charging from the trees. The beast immediately spotted Sally lying helpless and barreled toward her. With a guttural squeal, it thundered closer. Tyler released Sophia and sprinted toward the fallen leader. He shouted at the others to keep running while he accelerated to intercept. Charles caught up with Sophia, blocking her path as he called out. Reaching for her hand, he offered to lead her away, but she pushed past, declaring she was helping Tyler. Rage boiled in Charles as he cursed Tyler under his breath. Meanwhile, Tyler reached Sally and stretched his arm toward her. She grabbed his hand, thanking him tearfully. But instead of pulling her upright, Tyler clamped her shoulder firmly. With one powerful motion, he threw her back toward the others. Sophia and Charles caught her, checking frantically if she was all right. Tyler snapped at them, demanding why they hadn't fled as ordered. Bracing himself, he prepared to face the boar, when something shoved him hard from behind. Staggering, he lost his balance, and the beast locked onto him as its next target. It accelerated, preparing to gore him. Tyler paused, calculating his options. At the last possible instant, he flipped backward, soaring over the beast. The animal thundered beneath him, skewering nothing but plants. Landing with a roll, Tyler checked himself for wounds. Blood streaked his chest. Its tusks had grazed him. The boar wheeled around, eyes now fixed on Sally and Sophia. With another shriek, it pawed the earth, ready to charge again. Sophia froze in terror, rooted to the spot. The beast locked onto her and lunged forward. Tyler judged it weighed at least 300 kilos. A direct hit would kill her instantly. Vowing not to let her die, he sprinted toward her. The animal screamed again as it bore down. Sophia stood paralyzed, crying desperately for help. Tyler slammed into her, shoving her out of harm's way. But the move left him to take the full brunt of the collision. He flew several meters, tumbling painfully across the ground. The boar slowed briefly, studying his motionless form. Tyler spat blood, forcing himself to think through his options again. The beast lowered its head and charged for the kill. Sophia and Sally shrieked warnings, begging him to move. Its squeal pierced the air as it closed the distance. At the last heartbeat, Tyler rolled aside, sending the animal crashing into a tree. The impact dazed it, dropping it unconscious. Tyler, coughing blood, knew he had to finish it now. Sophia asked if he was all right, but he hissed for silence. He reasoned grimly that unless he killed it quickly, it would kill him. Hidden nearby, Charles muttered angrily, wishing Tyler had died under the boar's tusks. His eyes lingered on Sophia, recalling how at university he had never dared confess his feelings. Back then, he had only admired her from afar during shared courses. Now, stranded together, he felt fate had given him a chance. In his jealousy, he concluded Tyler's presence was the only obstacle. Deciding Sophia would depend on him if Tyler died, Charles resolved to kill him. Meanwhile, the boar regained consciousness and lunged again. Tyler braced himself. He dodged at the last second, gaining a brief opening. Exploiting the chance, he hurled his bone knife into its hind leg. The blade sank deep, drawing blood and howls of agony. The beast shrieked, writhing from the pain. Driven mad, it turned on Tyler with renewed fury. He gaped at its resilience, searching desperately for another tactic. Dust flew as it charged again. Tyler sprinted for a tree, executing his earlier strategy. Sophia screamed his name in terror as he ran. At the last instant, he leapt aside, letting it smash headlong into the trunk. The stunned boar staggered again. Landing behind it, Tyler prepared his finishing move. He yanked his knife free from its leg and advanced toward its skull. Muttering to himself, he slashed repeatedly at its neck and head. The beast resisted, thrashing to strike back. At one point, it caught his knife in its jaws, halting the blows. Tyler kicked it squarely in the face, knocking the weapon loose. He scrambled onto its back to avoid its tusks. Remembering their weak spot, he hammered his fists above its eyes. Shocked at its stamina, he pounded relentlessly. Sophia, Alex, and Sally rushed to help. They grabbed its legs, trying to hold it down. Tyler mustered all his strength, striking over and over. Slowly, the boar's resistance waned. Tyler finally straightened, fists soaked in blood, as the beast went limp. The survivors collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. Tyler lifted his knife and drove it between its eyes, ending its life. Breathing hard, he expressed relief that the battle was over. Sophia asked about his condition, but he brushed it off, saying he was fine. She pointed to his bleeding chest, warning that the wound had to be treated at once. From behind a tree, Charles emerged, remarking with forced admiration that Tyler was incredible for taking down such a beast. He joked nervously that perhaps they would dine on roasted pork that evening. Tyler strode toward him and suddenly kicked him hard, sending Charles sprawling several meters. Groaning on the ground, Charles clutched his side and asked why Tyler had attacked him. Towering over him, Tyler accused him of trying to have him killed. Charles feigned ignorance, insisting he had no idea what Tyler meant. Tyler reminded him that he was shoved straight into the path of the boar. Charles shook his head frantically, claiming Tyler had misunderstood, that he never intended such a thing. Tyler ignored the excuses, tossing his bone knife at Charles's feet. He coldly told him that if he truly wanted to kill him, he'd now have the chance. Sophia confronted Charles, reminding him Tyler had saved his life and demanding to know why he repaid him with betrayal. Still squirming, Charles repeated that he had no wish to hurt Tyler. Tyler said if Charles wouldn't pick up the blade, then he would, bending down toward it. In that instant, Charles's face twisted, and he snatched the knife up first. He raised it threateningly, preparing to lunge. Seizing his moment, Charles swung the knife in a sharp, sweeping strike. Tyler deflected the attack with a quick kick, knocking Charles off balance. Before Charles could recover, Tyler wrenched the knife from his grasp. Driving his elbow hard into Charles's ribs, Tyler made him stagger back. Charles slammed into a tree and crumpled to the ground. Wheezing painfully, he struggled to draw breath. Without hesitation, Tyler drove the knife into his shoulder. Charles screamed, hot blood seeping down his shirt. Sally asked if Tyler was certain Charles truly meant to kill him. She silently prayed that as fellow students, they would someday learn the value of human life, urging Tyler to spare him. Tyler leaned close, telling Charles he had no intention of killing him. If he had, the blade would be in his throat. Pulling the knife free, he added that this was only a warning. Charles stuttered excuses again, but Tyler cut him off, saying he'd be shown mercy only once. Next time, Tyler warned, he wouldn't hesitate to kill. Sophia rushed to Tyler, insisting his chest wound needed urgent care. Tyler glanced at the carcass, remarking that its stench would attract predators. They needed vines to drag it to the shore and butcher it. Alex nodded in agreement, inwardly losing respect for Charles but admiring Tyler's resolve. Soon they returned with vines, hauling the boar together. Sally supported the injured Charles while Tyler, Sophia, and Alex pulled the heavy carcass. At last they dragged it onto the beach. Sophia sat in the sand, relieved, while Tyler swayed weakly. Dizzy, he clutched his head, struggling to stay upright. Moments later, his body gave out, and he collapsed. Alex and Sophia hurried to him, alarmed at his burning fever. Sophia pulled back his shirt, gasping at the inflamed wound. Turning to Alex, she begged to know what was happening. Alex said grimly the tusks likely carried dangerous bacteria. Without medicine, the wound could be fatal. Sophia bent over Tyler, calling his name, pleading for him to stay conscious. He muttered that he only needed sleep, insisting he'd recover on his own. Furious, Sophia shouted that untreated, the wound would lead to tetanus and death. Tyler smiled faintly, telling her not to worry, that he'd be fine. But his eyes closed again, and Alex noted his fever was climbing. They had to disinfect the wound immediately. Sophia panicked, saying they didn't even have clean water. Alex hesitated, then asked if she was Tyler's girlfriend. He explained there was one crude but ancient method of sterilization. Eager, Sophia demanded to know what it was. Alex handed her a coconut shell and told her to wash the wound with urine. Sophia remembered her medical training. Untreated wounds always risked infection. She recalled that, in emergencies, the midstream of urine could be used as a substitute disinfectant. She also remembered that during recovery, washing with regular water could introduce fresh infection. Hours later, Tyler awoke beneath sunlight filtering through ferns. Covering his eyes, he slowly assessed his surroundings. He realized he was safe on the shore, with Sophia sitting watch beside him. She noticed him stir and hurried over, studying him closely. She pressed a coconut into his hand, urging him to drink for his dehydration. He drank deeply, then asked how long he'd been unconscious. She told him it had been almost 20 hours, then showed him the bandage over his wound. Flustered, she quickly admitted she had dressed it, and he thanked her. Noticing how clean it looked, he asked where they'd found fresh water. She avoided the question. He pressed again, wanting to know what they had used. Embarrassed, Sophia confessed it was cleaned with urine. Tyler chuckled weakly, saying he should have remembered that method himself, and praised her choice. When she asked if he was angry, he reassured her that she had saved his life. He had no reason to be upset. She admitted she had been terrified his wound would worsen, so she insisted on caring for him. Tyler realized only a few people had ever shown him such devotion. He thanked her warmly, though she asked him not to be so formal. She reminded him he'd saved her countless times, while she had only patched him up. Trying to sit up, Tyler failed and asked her for help. Alex appeared, checking in on him and asking about his condition. He promised Tyler that he could always count on his support. Tyler nodded, thanking him sincerely. Two girls approached, one introducing herself as Elizabeth, a freshman. The other stayed shyly silent until Elizabeth introduced her as Clara, who had saved her life. Clara thanked Tyler awkwardly for the roast pork, leaving him confused. Alex explained that the previous night they had made a fire that Elizabeth and Clara had noticed. He added that Clara had been separated from her husband and children during the wreck and still didn't know their fate. Tyler reassured her gently, saying if they had made it here, they would reunite eventually. Elizabeth chimed in, saying she had heard of Tyler's deeds and was amazed at his strength. Sophia confronted her, pointing out she wasn't even in their class, questioning why she acted like she knew him. Their bickering escalated while Tyler reasoned silently there had to be far more survivors on the island than he first thought. Looking aside, he noticed Charles lying unconscious, surrounded by ferns. Alex told Tyler that Charles had deserved what he got, but urged leaving it at that for the sake of survival. Tyler rose unsteadily, agreeing he no longer cared as long as Charles behaved. Sophia abandoned her quarrel and ran to Tyler, warning him not to strain himself. He brushed her off, claiming his wound had already healed. Alex invited Tyler to see what they had accomplished during his rest. He explained that with flint spearheads they had managed to light a fire. They had also dug a pit to preserve the meat in the heat. Sitting by the flames, Alex handed Tyler a portion, saying they had hoped the smoke would draw rescuers, but it hadn't. Sophia remarked that at least the fire had brought Elizabeth and Clara to them. Elizabeth and Sophia exchanged icy stares, tension rising again. Tyler scanned the bushes, spotting suspicious movement. A man peered through the trees before vanishing into the undergrowth. Tyler leapt up, grabbing his bone knife. Sophia hurried to him, asking what had alarmed him. He pointed toward the foliage, warning that someone was out there. Tyler raised his blade toward the brush, shouting for whoever was hiding to step out. No reply came, only the usual chatter of the jungle. Sophia wondered aloud if he was hallucinating, still weak from his wound, but Tyler swore someone was there. Losing patience, he lifted his knife high and roared, demanding the spy reveal himself. Slowly, a man emerged from the foliage, speaking English and claiming he was alone and unarmed. Sophia studied him, guessing he must be another survivor. Alex greeted the newcomer warmly in English, waving a hand, but Tyler's instincts tingled. How could anyone survive out here entirely alone? The stranger glanced nervously around before nodding at the group in greeting. Alex asked if he had been a passenger on the Genuina cruise ship. The man answered that he had sailed on the Pearl instead, giving his name as Jack. Alex introduced himself, while Sophia realized she understood only fragments of their exchange. Tyler stepped forward, asking Jack directly in English if he had truly been alone this whole time. Sophia marveled at Tyler's flawless American accent, recalling he'd been the weakest in English at university. The memory made her frown in confusion. Jack admitted he wasn't completely alone. His girlfriend had been with him but drowned trying to reach shore. Sophia sighed, saddened at how cruel reality was compared to romantic films. She imagined Rose from Titanic sinking rather than being saved. Offering comfort, Sophia told Jack he was blessed to survive and should be grateful. Jack thanked her kindly and asked how many people were in their group. Alex said all survivors were present here, pointing them out. He added that Charles lay injured among them. Jack inquired about his condition, wondering how he had been hurt. Alex admitted the wound was deep and survival was uncertain. Jack rummaged in his pockets, saying he might be able to help. He produced anti-inflammatory tablets, hoping they would aid Charles's recovery. Taking them, Alex asked where Jack had obtained such medicine. Jack explained he had bought them in China while traveling after catching a cold. Alex muttered they were worth a fortune now, calculating each tablet's value. Jack waved it off, insisting Alex take the whole bottle since he no longer needed them. Clara whispered her thanks, but Jack shrugged it away. Alex offered food and invited him to join their camp. Soon, Jack sat by their fire as they roasted pork together. He eyed the skewered meat suspiciously, asking what it was. Sophia answered honestly that it was wild boar. When he asked who had killed it, she admitted it had been Tyler. Jack studied Tyler closely but withheld further comment. Alex asked if he would like to become part of their group. Jack smiled, accepting without hesitation. Alex welcomed him as a new ally, and Jack thanked them for inclusion. Meanwhile, Sophia and Elizabeth resumed glaring at each other. After eating, Tyler turned to Jack, asking what he had eaten since arriving. Jack said he had survived on mushrooms and berries for 2 days. He added that he had also discovered a freshwater stream. The group listened in rapt attention, excited at the prospect of drinkable water. Alex asked if he remembered the stream's location. Jack assured him he knew the way perfectly. Alex rubbed his hands together eagerly, asking him to lead them there. Jack agreed, though Tyler interjected that he and Sophia had explored and found no such stream. Jack explained it was hidden by thick brush. Tyler asked how he had stumbled upon it if it was so concealed. Jack said he had found it purely by accident. Tyler wanted to press further, but Sophia touched his arm, suggesting they simply confirm by going. She whispered they could verify whether the stream existed or not. Tyler thought to himself how unlikely it was that an ordinary man could identify safe mushrooms and berries so easily. He also noted that after days of hunger, Jack had eaten very little pork. Alex, however, declared their hopes now rested on Jack's knowledge. Tyler stood, announcing he would go scouting with Jack alone. Sophia protested, warning Tyler he was still injured. Jack remarked on his wound, and Tyler admitted he'd been cut while fighting the boar. He asked Jack if he minded going alone with him. Jack calmly agreed, inviting him to follow. Together they slipped into the jungle. Tyler asked how much farther it was, and Jack said they were nearly there. Jack inquired about Tyler's injury and suggested bringing others along wouldn't have slowed them. Tyler dismissed it, saying the others would only get in the way, secretly relieved the girls hadn't come. After 20 minutes of trekking, Tyler asked again how far. Jack repeated they were almost there. Tyler reminded him he had said half an hour, but already more than 40 minutes had passed. Jack chuckled that he'd miscalculated, promising they were close. They reached a small clearing. Jack stopped, announcing they had arrived. though no sound of water reached Tyler's ears. Tyler frowned, asking where the stream was. Jack pointed to a deep pit nearby. Jack gestured for him to look down. He claimed the water ran at the bottom, like an underground spring. Peering carefully, Tyler realized it didn't resemble a stream at all. To his horror, the bottom was filled with human bones. Suddenly, two men burst from the bushes, shouting in English. One sneered, telling Tyler to rot in hell. Before he could react, Jack shoved him from behind. Tyler tumbled helplessly into the pit of bones. He landed hard on the grisly pile, bones crunching beneath him. Groaning, he checked his body for fractures or new injuries. Above, he heard the newcomers greeting Jack. Jack informed them smugly that 4 women and 3 men were in the camp, one gravely wounded. He added that with Tyler dealt with, only 1 more man needed killing. The accomplices praised him, calling it a job well done. As they left, Jack mentioned the survivors had fresh boar meat that would last a few days. Realization struck Tyler. Jack had deceived them all along and was not alone here. Fortunately, his arms and legs still worked, giving him a chance to escape. He felt his back, relieved his spine was intact. Looking at the mountain of bones, he knew Jack's gang would surely target Sophia and the others next. If he couldn't climb out, they wouldn't stand a chance. But his body betrayed him, and he collapsed back onto the bones. Gritting his teeth, he rolled over and began crawling slowly. He scanned the pit carefully, searching for anything useful. In one corner, he spotted a shallow pool beside a rotting log sprouting something unusual. Drawing closer, he realized it was a large longevity mushroom. He tried to move, but agony surged through him, knocking him flat. After a pause to gather strength, he resumed crawling inch by inch. He worried about the filth coating the bones, fearing infection if he lingered. He convinced himself the mushroom was his only chance. It was said to fight poison and inflammation. But as he neared it, a venomous centipede crept toward him. Spotting the creature in time, Tyler grabbed a nearby skull and smashed the centipede with a single blow. Finally reaching the fungus, he examined it, noting that its cap was usually coated in spores and edged roughly, its shade darker than expected. From his knowledge, such a specimen should be smooth, glossy, and brown, signs that it might be toxic. Yet, with no other choice, he forced the doubts from his mind. He touched the cap, finding it firm, not brittle like stone. He sniffed it, but caught no scent, which unsettled him further. Preparing himself mentally for the worst, he steadied his breathing. With sudden resolve, he bit deeply into the mushroom's head and tore off a piece. After swallowing it all, he lay back exhausted, noting its bitter taste but clinging to hope it would work. A moment later, his throat convulsed, choking him with spasms. Fire seared through his body, forcing him to thrash across the bone pile in agony. Gasping for air, he fixed his eyes on the small pool of water. He clawed his way toward it, fighting every second for survival. Pressing his face into it, he realized with relief it was fresh water. He drank greedily, then dropped to his knees, screaming at the overwhelming sensations in his body. His insides seemed to burn while simultaneously freezing. The torment peaked with another loud scream, scattering birds from the trees above. Elsewhere, Jack and his accomplices had already captured most of the group, demanding Alex surrender. Jack mocked him, doubting he had any skill to resist. One accomplice urged Jack to quit playing around and finish Alex. Meanwhile, Tyler's spasms faded, leaving him strangely calm. Collapsing on the ground, he admitted he had thought he'd die consumed by fire inside his own body. But now he felt a strange surge of lightness and power. Inspecting his chest, he saw the wounds closing, the pain gone. His thoughts were interrupted by birdsong, louder and sharper than ever before. He glanced toward the rim of the pit, straining to see. To his astonishment, he could make out a beetle crawling along a distant blade of grass. Realizing his vision had sharpened, he knew this wasn't the time to dwell on it. Escape was paramount. His eyes scanned the pit walls, finding vines about 4 meters up, though not easy to reach. He noticed the stone walls were uneven and climbable if dry, but on touching them, he found they were slick with moss and water. Refusing to quit, he began climbing carefully, clutching each ridge. He vowed silently he must not fall again. His foot slipped, yet his arms clung to the rocks as though glued. With steady breaths, he pulled himself higher. He realized not only his sight, but all his senses had been enhanced, proof that the mushroom was no ordinary plant. Regretting there hadn't been more, he forced the thought away and reached the vines. Grasping them with relief, he pulled himself toward freedom. At that same moment, one of Jack's men leapt at Alex, club raised. Alex reacted swiftly, bracing his spear to block. The others swarmed him, striking from multiple sides. One landed a heavy blow to his arm, knocking him down. Weaponless, Alex glared defiantly up at them. He spat insults, calling them scoundrels. One laughed cruelly, ordering the others to finish him. As they advanced, Alex's eyes darted to Sophia, fear for her written across his face. A thug grabbed her, commenting crudely on her pale skin and how delicious her flesh would taste. Sophia struggled, spitting that he was vile and shoving him back. He smirked and shoved her down, grinding her into the sand. Towering over her, he began tearing her clothes as she screamed desperately. The bandit mocked her, saying no one could save her now, that she would beg for death first. But Sophia shouted defiantly that Tyler wasn't dead and warned him to keep his hands off. Suddenly, a stone cracked against the bandit's head, stunning him. Jack spun around, demanding the thrower show himself. Only the rustle of leaves answered. Jack called out again, threatening disaster if the culprit didn't step forward. Then the bushes stirred faster, and Tyler exploded from them, greeting the bandits in sharp French. The survivors gasped in disbelief, overjoyed to see him alive. The thug pinning Sophia sneered, shocked to find Tyler standing. Snatching Jack's knife, he charged at Tyler. Screaming that Tyler shouldn't have survived, he swung wildly. Tyler sidestepped with ease, dodging the blade by mere centimeters. Spinning, he struck the man in the ribs, cracking bone. The thug bellowed, slashing again, but Tyler flipped away from the strike. Tyler's kick crashed into his face, sending him reeling unconscious. The body skidded meters across the sand, lying limp. Tyler pursued, not giving him time to recover. His elbow slammed into the man's throat, crushing it. The thug writhed and gasped until his body stilled in the sand. Jack stared in terror, demanding to know what Tyler had done. Tyler explained coldly that he had crushed his windpipe, leaving him to suffocate. Jack could not fathom how Tyler, just thrown into a pit, stood stronger than ever. He attempted to stall, begging for mercy, claiming he meant no harm. Then he shouted for his men to kill Tyler. They swarmed him with strikes, but not one touched him. To Tyler, their movements seemed slow, almost sluggish. He realized his speed had increased to the point he could anticipate their steps. Deciding to end the game, he flipped backward out of their reach. He scooped up his bone knife, glad to have it again. Focusing his strength, he hurled it with precision. The blade slashed into a thug's throat, tearing flesh and spilling blood. Without hesitation, Tyler sprinted to him. Wrenching the knife free, he moved on. Dodging blows easily, he searched for the next opening. One enemy lunged clumsily, leaving his head exposed. Tyler's knife cracked against the back of his skull. Another thug screamed as his comrade collapsed lifelessly. Tyler thought grimly that with a steel blade, the head would have been severed. The last man shrieked and lunged in desperation. Tyler slipped aside smoothly, avoiding the strike by inches. Concluding the fight had dragged on long enough, he prepared to finish it. He drove his elbow into the thug's ribs with brutal force. The man screamed in agony and crumpled. Tyler stood over him, waiting to see if he'd resist. The man raised himself on his elbows, terror in his eyes, as if to beg. Before he could speak, a spear pierced his chest. Alex, enraged, screamed for him to die, stabbing again and again. Even after the man's body went limp, Alex's rage drove him to continue. Tyler caught his arm, urging him to stop. Blinded by fury, Alex turned on him, raising his weapon. Tyler intercepted the blow, urging Alex to calm down, repeating firmly that it was him. Slowly, Alex blinked through the haze of rage and regained his senses. He turned and saw the body at his feet, mutilated by his own spear strikes. Falling to his knees, he let out a guttural scream at the horror of what he had done. He He couldn't believe he had slaughtered a man so viciously, but Tyler placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Inside, Tyler admitted he wasn't surprised. Alex had never killed before and now carried the weight of it. Unable to offer comfort, he told Alex simply that these men deserved their fate. Then he noticed Jack, frozen and trembling, still present. Snapping back, Jack tried to run, but Tyler warned him he'd never escape. Tyler yanked his knife from a corpse's skull, gripping it tight. Jack stammered excuses, claiming he had been forced against his will. He insisted he hadn't wanted to push Tyler into the pit. He promised to stay silent if Tyler spared him. Dropping to his knees, Jack swore he would never tell Davis a word. Alex overheard, shocked that Jack might have more allies. He whispered to Tyler that they needed to know who Davis was. Tyler suddenly kicked Jack in the face, breaking his nose. Jack screamed, clutching his bleeding face. Tyler leaned in close, reminding him sharks prowled these waters. He grabbed Jack by the head, ignoring his begging. Dragging him toward the surf, Tyler plunged his head under. Blood flowed from Jack's broken nose, spreading in the current. After a while, Tyler yanked him back up, still holding tight. He pointed out the fins circling closer, drawn by the scent. Jack sobbed, pleading not to die. Tyler pulled him closer, warning this was his last chance. He told Jack that if he lied even once, he would die here. Jack glimpsed the fins slicing nearer and panicked, swearing to talk. Tyler demanded to know how many of his people were on the island. Jack muttered nervously there were only 5. Tyler dragged him deeper, pressing him again. This time, Jack blurted the truth. There were over 20. Tyler asked where they were now. Jack said they were camped on the eastern shore. Tyler pointed to the circling sharks, warning him to speak honestly or be fed to them alive. He promised that another lie would end with Jack's head in a shark's jaws. On shore, the survivors gathered near Alex, shaken. Alex demanded angrily to know how many Jack had already eaten. Jack admitted 3 or 4, bragging they had caught plenty lately. Tyler asked how many captives remained. Jack revealed Davis had ordered some kept alive for later meals. Disgust boiled in Alex, who spat that they were nothing but animals. Tyler pressed him for a number. Jack admitted about 20 prisoners. Tyler noted that if there were 20 raiders and 20 captives, they couldn't live on human flesh alone. Jack replied that people were a last resort. Furious, Alex charged into the surf, screaming that they had no humanity left. Jack shouted back that without eating, they would have starved. Tyler appeared behind him, snapped his neck with a swift motion. He flung the corpse into the water where sharks tore it apart. Tyler swam back swiftly, reaching shore again. Sophia rushed to him, saying how relieved she was, while he stripped off his torn shirt and handed it to her. He told her to wear it, even if ragged. She asked what he'd wear instead. Tyler glanced at the corpses, deciding to take one of their clothes. He found a shirt on a body, stripped it off, and cleaned it in seawater. Once rinsed of blood, he pulled it over himself. Returning, he urged Sophia to dress quickly, which she did. She slipped into his shirt while he tightened his grip on his weapon. Together, they watched sharks devour the last remains. Alex criticized Tyler for killing Jack, saying he might have given them valuable intelligence. Tyler asked bluntly what he would have done with that information. Sally overheard and asked if they intended to rescue the captives. Alex admitted the idea was noble, but warned that Davis commanded more than 20 fighters. Sally retorted that they couldn't abandon potential students among the captives. She turned to Tyler, reminding him of his military service and duty to protect. Tyler corrected her. He hadn't served in China's army, but in another country in a unit called F Troop. They stared at him, confused, asking if he was a foreign soldier. He explained he was a Chinese citizen but had been recruited into an overseas special unit. Sally said only 1% of soldiers qualified for such a force, calling it extraordinary. Sophia asked what kind of squad it was. Tyler described it as a government-recognized mercenary branch. Sally confirmed that it was indeed the only overseas unit acknowledged officially. Tyler recalled being promoted to sergeant after just 3 months. Within a year, he had risen to lieutenant, faster than anyone before. He admitted he could have become the first Chinese officer to reach the highest ranks in that unit, but he joined only for money, not for duty or patriotism. Still, he agreed they couldn't ignore the captives. Sooner or later, Davis would come for them anyway. Silently, he added that he was on this island only because of a secret assignment, one that forced him to pose as a medical student. He warned them that after killing 5 raiders, they would surely retaliate. The survivors rifled through the dead men's belongings. Alex asked Tyler if he had planned on saving the prisoners from the start. Tyler told him it was dangerous, requiring complete cooperation. Anyone unprepared would doom them. He turned suddenly to Clara, asking her opinion. She froze, then nervously agreed with him. Tyler noted to himself that she seemed frightened but refused to admit it. Alex suggested someone stay behind to watch over Charles, volunteering Clara. She agreed quickly, promising to care for him. She walked away toward Charles. Alex told Tyler they first needed to locate the enemy camp. Tyler replied that Jack had already given them enough information. It wouldn't be hard. What mattered was how to fight them. He asked Alex for the time. Alex checked, saying it was about 1 in the afternoon. Tyler declared they should begin immediately before it grew late. Handing Clara a spear, he told her to use it for both defense and splitting coconuts. He added that she could roast meat from the pit if she wished. She nodded meekly. Tyler reminded them that Davis would soon notice 5 missing men. If they were to free the captives, it had to be now, while surprise was theirs. Alex agreed, calling the plan sound, and asked what steps Tyler proposed. Hours later, armed with spears and clubs, they crept through the jungle. Tyler halted, ears pricking at a strange sound. Alex whispered a question, but Tyler silenced him with a finger to his lips. The group strained their ears, catching faint noises among the leaves. Tyler murmured that someone was ahead, prompting them to tighten their grips on weapons. The undergrowth rustled as bushes shifted unnaturally. Tyler ordered everyone to stay hidden and silent. Though confused, they obeyed instantly, crouching among the foliage. From ahead came a man's voice, yelling for someone to stop running. Curiosity got the better of Sophia, and she peeked through the leaves. She spotted a woman darting away playfully, pursued by a man. He caught her against a tree, laughing that she couldn't escape him. Tilting her chin, he asked when she planned to leave Jack and why she clung to him at all. He stroked her face, saying that if she abandoned Jack, they wouldn't need to sneak around. Sophia's stomach twisted. So this was the Jack Tyler had just thrown to the sharks. She pitied him, realizing he'd fought for his life while his lover betrayed him. Oblivious to the hidden onlookers, the pair carried on with their games. Their laughter and banter carried loudly through the jungle. The survivors could clearly hear every shameless word. Sophia blushed, baffled that they weren't embarrassed to behave so openly. Tyler leaned close, whispering in her ear, making her flush even deeper. He guided her gently to a safer spot, ensuring they stayed hidden. The couple, lost in passion, took things further, confusing the silent witnesses even more. Tyler and the others kept quiet, trying to gauge if more enemies lurked nearby. Breaking the silence, Alex asked Tyler what they should do, assuming the pair were part of Davis's gang. Tyler suggested that Elizabeth, Sally, Sophia, and Alex pose as lost survivors to distract them. If things turned violent, they were to flee immediately. Sophia frowned, asking what Tyler planned while they acted as bait. With a grin, he told her he'd wait for the right opening. If the lovers chased them, he'd strike. If they ran for reinforcements, he'd cut them off.